All right, serious question for you. When was the last time the very device you're watching this on was turned off? I don't mean sleep, I don't mean lock, I don't mean standby. I mean a hard shutdown. Isn't it ironic that 99% of tech issues are often resolved with the age-old advice?
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
I'm sharing this painfully obvious example because it is a metaphor for how we, as humans, operate. You might think you don't have an off switch, but if you don't, your body will force it. Hear it from me, someone who burnt out so hard in my first 6 months of a graduate role at a startup that my doctor forced me to have a tonsillectomy. That is, my tonsils had to be removed. I tonsillitis 3 times within 3 months. And as you can see, this was my forced rest for someone who was working 50, 60, 70 or 80 hour weeks because I didn't have an off switch. You may have had a similar season of your life. Powering on, staying hard, locking in, or being in indefinite monk mode is a badge of honor. But here's the problem that all of the internet gurus and experts all seem to admit or actually forget to mention. What happens at the end of your grind period? What do you do at the end of your lock-in? Or how long do you lock in for? We don't stay in a season for a perpetual amount of time. Seasons change, and so do you. Trying to fight your very innate nature is going to land you in a hospital bed or an emergency procedure if you don't learn how to navigate, balance, or temper the changes in the rhythm or the cadence of how you operate and function as a human being. I'm not talking about just surviving, I'm talking about thriving. This video is for you if you're currently in a season of being locked in, but you're not quite sure what sits on the other side of it, because I never knew myself. Now, you might think I'm here to bash on the grind set and locking in and getting things done. Absolutely not. In fact, I am where I am right now because I have had so many intentional bursts or sprint periods in my life that helped me get to where I am today. But what I plead and pray and recognize is missed in so many of these aspirational, motivational videos that are probably filling up your news feeds. No one is talking about how do you transition or how do you integrate. Because here's what has happened to me and I've seen in other friends and those in my network when they lock in forever. You lose social connection or you struggle to reintegrate afterwards. See, what I wish I'd done in hindsight is I'd actually told friends, family, those that were nearest and dearest to me proactively, hey, I'm going to be off the grid for a period of time. It's going to be this long. After that period, please reach out to me again. I'd love to reconnect. I'd love to start hanging out again. The problem with the traditional grind set mindset is that so many people just disappear indefinitely, don't respond to any messages from friends, and people probably stop reaching out to you or even thinking that you're accessible. And that completely severs relationships that are harder to then reintegrate years after. I've gone through this firsthand. And yes, while I'm so grateful I had friends who were willing to welcome me back into life and understand that I was going through my grind, it would have been healthier and more transparent if I was upfront with what I was doing and managed expectations from the outset instead of trying to reactively try and repair or reconnect after the damage was done. Secondly, you lose perspective of yourself in the world and in the universe. What I noticed is that I had a very self-centric energy when I was going through these periods of grinding. Now, you do need that to protect your energy and to limit your input so that your energy is focused on a particular project or business that you might be pushing towards. But if you stay so bubble wrapped and fixated within your world, you seem to lose reality or lose a sense of your being in the entire universe. Now this might sound a little bit woo and esoteric, but all of a sudden your small issues become the entire universe and you lose sight of what's more important to you and what's more meaningful. The reason you're actually doing the grind or the sprint in the first place. That could be family, that could be legacy, that could be for your kids. Whatever the reason is, it's probably out there in the world. And when you become so insulated from receiving any of it, any of that inspiration or realization of why you're doing it, you get fixated in this loop where your mental and emotional health can take a massive hit. And most importantly, you're a human, you're not a robot. So your motivation and inspiration is going to dip hard. I've gone through so many of these seasons, riding that new year energy, locking into some new project, and then within a couple of weeks, that same energy I was riding on has fizzled. And now you're trying to self-motivate this entire time. And the more and more you do it, the more futile it becomes. Not because the project isn't valuable itself, but because you don't feel like you have an end in sight. You're running this indefinite race where the finish line is just ambiguously pushing out further and further and further. So coming back to that tonsillectomy, you think that after being humbled and forced to sit down and recover, I might have changed my habits and my behavior? Nope. I came straight back and turned that switch on. While I didn't have any follow-up surgeries in the remaining 4 years of working at that startup, when I finally handed in my resignation and the HR team was helping me off board, I found out that I had 39 days of unused sick leave. You don't get paid out for sick leave here in Australia. And it wasn't because I didn't get sick. I definitely know I got sick across those remaining 4 years. It's because I didn't use it. I thought not using them was a badge of honor. And only now in hindsight do I realize how much of an idiot I was for not being willing to accept and to recognize my own fragility, my own shortcomings, or even how the human body actually operates. So it wasn't until years later when I was going through a bit of a transformation era and I decided to enter a bodybuilding competition. Take note, this is my first and last I ever did. I learned, thankfully, because of my trainer, he explained and broke down the metaphor of deloading. A lot of people, including me, first think that when it comes to bodybuilding, all you're doing is pumping weights 24/7, counting calories, counting steps, and just eating raw chicken and rice. And yes, while there is a level of routine, it isn't static, it adapts. You go through cycles. That is where you might sprint on a 6 to 8 week training cycle or regimen with your trainer. Depending on what you're doing, you could be bulking, which is adding weight, adding muscle, or shredding, which is cutting weight so that you lose the fat and you reveal the muscle that's underneath and you really lean out. But at the end of each of these phases, you have a deload. A deload can be like a 1-2 week period where you pull down your reps, you pull down your sets, you pull down the calories you're doing or the number of steps you're taking every day, and you actually allow all the micro tears that your muscles have been going through to repair, to actually integrate, to avoid injury long-term. This can apply to marathon runners, any long-term physical feats. The best performers or the best athletes in any domain will all tell you their secret isn't all in the training, it is predominantly in the recovery. And this analogy could not have been more true. There is no way for 12 to 16 months, I could have just eaten the same meal and done the same thing every single day. I would have blown my brains out. And that is how your boy got on stage looking like a ripped Oompa Loompa. Best believe, man, my head looks photoshopped in that, Drop it in the comments if you think so. But honestly, I wouldn't have lasted that long if my trainer was not that hard on my case about my rest and recovery. As you can see, he was more on my case about the quality of my sleep, my hydration, what I was doing on non-workout days, and how much me time I was having for me, my partner, my friends, and my family. I was surprised when he'd open check-in calls on Zoom and he'd be asking about those things, because that's how he knew that my entire program was going to be sustainable, that I was going to continue doing this long-term. He's obviously seen dozens of athletes going through the same process, and that was going to be crucial in order for me to get on the stage and not quit early or burn out too soon. This excerpt that I heard from Naval Ravikant changed my perspective, and it might change your outlook as well, so I thought I'd just read it for you. The way people tend to work most effectively, especially in knowledge work, is to sprint as hard as they can while they feel inspired to work and then rest. They take long breaks. It's more like a lion hunting and less like a marathon of running. You sprint and then you rest. You reassess and then you try again. You end up building a marathon of sprints. You can read the entire blog post from Naval Ravikant. I've included a link for it in the description of this video. So when I combine the lived experience of deloading, that is pre-scheduled breaks or periods for rest and R&R, coupled with this insight from Naval Ravikant, which may be relevant to you if you're watching this, whether you're a creator, an entrepreneur, a founder, or someone that wants to achieve some pretty big goals in your life. This is a protocol I now use and I implore you to think about so that you actually have a system to sustain high output growth. I look ahead for each of my quarters, and depending on my current client engagement, my projects, or what's going on in my personal life, I break work into 6 to 8 week sprints. These are periods where I'm going all in, pedal to the metal. This could be launching programs or projects, client collaborations and engagements, or running cohort or community programs. As you can see, your boy's pulling up at co-working spaces, locking into editing, and going hard on running masterclasses or live lessons like in this image. But I then have a pre-scheduled, non-negotiable 2 to 4 week period. Now, the time can change. You may not be able to afford yourself 2 to 4 weeks, depending on where you're at with life, your business, your family, your kids, I get it. But having something in the calendar, having a finish line, having a light at the end of your tunnel is key, and you can do it with whatever you want. Airbnb getaways, go to the beach, long walks, fly overseas, just have an empty calendar and tell people that you're not accepting calls. Defer work or reschedule if necessary. People understand because you're a human. In fact, they'll probably respect you more for setting healthy boundaries and knowing that you recover. This is what it looks like for me. In my example, I went away to a place in Australia called Byron Bay. It's beautiful. We had a 4-day stay. That was me and my partner. We booked a rustic Airbnb. It was just on the farm, so we had these beautiful chickens coming up to us every morning and some cows. Just read some books, beautiful fireplace to reflect over sunset. It was a dopamine detox. No technology, no content creation. In fact, that's why this YouTube channel hasn't had any content being posted in the last month. I actually practice what I preach. Now, shortly after, I had a pre-scheduled trip and a stay at a nomad village called Jungli. It's run by a former colleague of mine called Divi, who runs it on his family's ancestral lands over in Dandeli in India. It was a paradise. It was a beautiful chance to reconnect, to claim time back for myself, and to do what I needed to, which was reflecting, journaling, checking in, actually checking with myself, and just having these beautiful, spontaneous conversations with so many like-minded souls that were also there in this beautiful paradise of creatives, artists, entrepreneurs, and digital nomads, or slow-mads, as I came to embrace. And then returning to Australia, having a brief crossover window with my partner for a few days. We then went separate ways, and my partner spent a beautiful week in Whit Sundays with her girlfriends. I actually flew down to hang out with and work with Tom Nosk and also hang out with his fiance and their beautiful dog called Ollie as we were preparing for the upcoming cohort of Time to Build. Now, above all, I'm not sharing this to sell your lifestyle. I'm not telling you to subscribe to what I've done. I just want to give you a real world example of what's happened. Because right now it is early August and I've come back recharged with more clarity and with more focused and energized to return to my content, sharing and hanging out with you every week, my community, the clients that I've been serving so far, and just everyone in my life with a battery that is now full. And yes, I'm ready to now lock in again and toggle on for the next short period of time with a very similar set of pre-scheduled plans I already have for October, which makes all of the work in the upcoming sprint just a little bit more bearable, knowing that there is an end in sight. So my friend, if you've been locked in for too long and you don't have an end in sight and you feel like you're running on fumes, you don't have much left in the tank, or you're about to go into one of these sprint lock-in periods right now, I implore you, please pause. Don't jump to the next video. Don't do anything. Plan an upcoming period. I don't care if it's a one-day getaway, an exercise, an activity, whatever it looks like for you that you know fills your cup up. Look ahead in your calendar, make it non-negotiable. In fact, if you want real accountability, drop it in the comments below and I will comment and follow up when that time comes as accountability to make sure that you've actually done what you said. That is my plea, that you look at every aspect of your life as a marathon of sprints and not this ongoing marathon. Yes, there will be an uncomfortable feeling of having to fight with that productivity mindset when you switch off. I still do. It takes me sometimes 3 to 4 days, even up to a week in my rest periods to finally let my brain switch off. But that's where the magic happens. The monkey mind isn't bouncing around. You find clarity and the ability to recalibrate with what really matters with you. So I hope this video served you and I'll see you in the next one.